Joining me now is Stephen Chesney of Agents of Your Demise. They have a great new song called Sick Existence. Thank you, Stephen. I appreciate you being here on the show today.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, whenever I'm talking to a musician, I usually, especially for the first time, I always like to kind of get a sense for what their background was, not even their career, like long before that. As a kid, what music did you hear? Was it a musical household? Did you hear a lot of stuff around the house? What are some of your earliest memories of music?
My entire life, my parents were both musicians. My mom was a singer, dad guitar player. They did some band stuff together, even though my dad had a completely separate career. So I mean, there's pictures and video of me holding toy guitars, pretty much within a year or so of birth. I was at least holding on to them. So I like to tell myself I've at least matured a little bit because I really haven't changed since I was about a year old. And my I grew up in England, and my older cousin was a massive fan of Iron Maiden, Guns N' Roses, British bands like Thunder, Little Angels, and I was introduced by him to them when I was about like 5, 6 years old. So I've been listening to the same stuff for a long time because of all things, even though it was back in England, my parents were both country music fans,
Oh,
and
wow.
yeah, so I grew up. Trying to not listen to country at the time. So, you know, I'm a bit better about it these days, but I pretty much have always stuck with the same kind of music I was introduced to. Fell in love with it young, and it never changed.
Yeah, I feel like I have that in common with you, and I'm always impressed. I like hearing new stuff. I loved hearing your new song and all that, but the go tos do tend to be the same bands I've been listening to for 30, 35 years. My brother's 5 years older than me, so I definitely had access to some stuff that wouldn't have been in the house otherwise. But when he got Metallica Master of Puppets, excuse me, I was like, no, that's too. I was too little. I was like 9, and I'm like, I don't think I'm ready for that. It took a minute, but he would get like the latest like Kiss record, and he had Maiden and Ozzy and all that stuff. And upstairs, my dad had like a great classic rock record collection from the late '60s and early '70s. And I was telling somebody in an interview about this the other day that it was obviously at that time it's like, boy, I'd really like to hear some more Rolling Stones songs. I have to save up and buy 10 albums. Well, I could go upstairs and my dad had those albums. My dad had all the Doors albums. He had all the Beatles albums. So it was like, it was like sort of a low tech Spotify in the late 80s and early 90s that I was just like, I want to hear all this stuff. So I think it probably saved me hundreds, if not thousands, of dollars, Stephen. That my dad
That
had such a great record collection.
that's it, man. I had my cousin made me mixtapes of all of my of all of his favorite bands so that I could like get into various different ones, and it's the exact same thing. He was a massive like CD collector, and he had just about everything you could think of, including all of like the LA rock stuff from the 80s, which was big in England, but by no means as big as it was here.
Sure.
But he was like so into that stuff that I was like, all those doors were open to me young. And so the first time I heard Guns, and I heard like a Slash solo and Eddie Van Halen and everything, I was like, that's what guitars are supposed to do. I appreciate this country thing, but I
Yeah.
prefer it sounded like this. And that was the end of it for me. That was my life was decided from that point on.
Well, I hate to always lean on the same anecdotes, but since I think you'll be able to relate a little bit from what your parents listened to, I do always point out the fact that my mom really only had two 8-track cassettes. She had John Denver's greatest hits and Barry Manilow's greatest hits. And I realized that what I heard my dad listening to upstairs was what I was into. And, John Denver's fine for hanging out with the Muppets at Christmas time, but that was about it for me. Actually,
Yeah.
You know what? I'm going to stop myself for a second. Those movies he did with George Burns, the Oh God movies, those were hysterical, but I didn't need to hear him sing. You know,
John Denver was one that, yeah, I appreciate the talent, but was never able to
absolutely.
get into it either.
Yeah.
Not at all.
Yeah. So at what point, so, you're hearing all this stuff. At what point do you go, well, obviously I need to do this? Was there a defining moment or did it just build up and you're like, all right, yeah, I want in on this?
Um, Probably the first time that I heard Night Train. That
Yeah.
was, once I heard Welcome to the Jungle and Night Train as a kid, I was like, wow, I was very young to be getting into that stuff too. And I just thought it was the coolest thing in the world. So I was like, thankfully my parents were cool with it for the most part. So I yeah, just add that disclaimer in there.
Yeah, of
So
course.
I had I had like the Guns N' Roses calendar and everything when I was like 6, 7 years old, and it
Yeah.
was just from the moment that I heard and saw that stuff, it was like that was all I wanted to do, because I'd already been around music and everything, and been
Mhm.
shown just some simple chords and everything already at that point. So, I mean, I started playing guitar like properly when I was probably like 6 years old, and went along with it.
Oh, wow.
So I have literally. It's not that I've not grown in terms of music appreciation or different kinds of stuff, but I've stayed really like in line with what I was introduced to, that I love from the get go. Like it was pretty much set in stone from the first moment I heard that stuff.
Well, yeah, it's setting it in stone, I think, is the perfect way to describe it because it's the foundation that everything else is built on,
Yeah,
And,
exactly.
and when I was a kid, my favorite singer was Alice Cooper, and I still get really excited to hear when he's doing new music with the original band and stuff like that. I was 11 when Appetite for Destruction came out. You being 6, me being 11, that is exactly why the record company said, no, you have to change the album cover. You can't have that really graphic, alien assaulting a woman called Appetite for Destruction. And that's exactly why they're like, no, we've got something really good here. I think if the album wasn't good, they would have been like, yeah, who cares? But they knew what they had. And I think that GNR is obviously such an important part, and it makes me sad to think that they're a band that we should at this point have at least 10 albums, but probably 20,
Yeah.
but they can only go on tour if they don't get in the studio together and try and create. So I guess you got to take what you can get, Stephen.
Yeah, I see that's one of the things for me as a fan of those guys as well, kind of going off the beaten track a little bit here. But I was introduced to the Appetite stuff around like the time the Illusions came out.
Sure. Okay.
And so I heard the Live in Tokyo videos
Mhm.
when they were released. And so I was watching the live show and the full band with the horn section, your Teddy Zigzag on the
Yeah.
keys and Dizzy and everything else. And I was like, it pulled me in because of the fact that they were a full, like they had everything. It was,
Yeah.
and that doesn't make it sounds, less cool, because I'm not talking about the dangerous Guns N' Roses from '87. But
Sure.
when being a kid and being introduced to that stuff, and seeing you know a rock band that had a bad reputation and everything, but were writing these extended pieces with piano and the orchestras and everything else. That was amazing stuff for me.
Yeah, obviously, like November Rain is their long song that everybody knows, but I always loved Estranged and especially Coma. And the
Hmm.
fact that they would do these, and yeah, they're just like, well, we need to do our best to recreate this live. So the fact that it was almost like, Bruce Springsteen had the E Street Band, GNR like needed just as many people to try and recreate it.
Yep.
So, and it was great. I only ever saw them perform sort of in that era from the Illusions. I saw them at Madison Square Garden in New York in late 1991, and
Oh,
Soundgarden opened before their record was big, Bad Motorfinger.
yeah.
And then I don't love huge stadium shows really, but when they went on tour with Metallica and Faith No More, that still I'm like, anytime I go to a stadium show, I'm like, yeah, it's all right, but it's never going to compare to those three bands in that one moment of time in
Yeah.
1992. You know,
I
but
don't think I've ever, the funny thing about that is now I think about it, I don't know that I've ever even been to a stadium show. And I'm actually about to for the first time. I'm going to see the Oasis reunion in a couple of months.
I was about to jump in, and I'm like, it's going to have to be Oasis, isn't it? Because,
Yep, sure
yeah.
is.
And it's funny. My son was at a birthday party last weekend, and one of the other dads was talking about, yeah, they're taking a family trip to the UK to go to
Oh,
one of the Wembley shows, because he's like, yeah, I don't know if because yeah, I live in LA now, and he's like, yeah, I don't know if they're going to make it to the Rose Bowl, so I want to go. I want to go right away. People said that when the Black Crowes got back together too, because when you dislike your brother that much, it can sometimes be too hard to get over, Stephen.
yeah, I have that concern because I have Rose Bowl tickets
Okay.
too, and I was actually just reading something the other day where Liam was saying there's going to be absolutely like not even any photo shoots beforehand, during, nothing. It's like they're doing absolutely nothing other than showing up on stage
and
together. And
and they're not even rehearsing together,
no,
and
they're
that
doing
sounds
their stuff
smart, actually,
separately.
to tell you the truth.
It
So
it does, but at some point it's going to happen, and then we'll just have to cross our fingers because
yeah, and I think the not taking any photos, I think, is great from a marketing standpoint. And no, I don't think he's really thinking that way, but management's probably like, yes, the first time anybody sees them, they're going to be on stage together for the first time in, I don't know, it's more than 20 years. I forget. I lose the thread a little bit with those guys.
I think
The
it was 2009. I think was the last
Okay,
time they
so
played
yeah,
together.
pretty
Yeah,
close to 20 years at this
yeah,
point.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so
Absolutely.
yeah, so yeah, so that'll be great, and yeah, I see that's good. That's going to be a great stadium show. Now, did you
Yeah.
ever see them back in the day? Because most people that I'm talking to sort of missed that window, especially here in the U.S., missed the window to see them.
Well, kind of two-part answer because I didn't get to see them play live. I was like still like a little too young to be able to go to any shows like that on my own or anything. But if you're familiar with Tracy Elliott bass amplifiers, their hometown is my hometown in England, and my mom just happened to know somebody that worked there and was told that Oasis were going to be there because of some endorsement stuff that was going on. So I was able to go down and meet them in
Oh,
like
cool.
'96, I think it was something like that. Like, so I was the little kid, and they were super nice to me, which was at the height of them being thought of as the worst of the worst. Um, except what was his name, Alan McGee, I think, the manager, who refused to sign my autograph, which is okay because in all honesty I was very young and didn't actually know who he was, so that's uh
Right,
probably just as
exactly.
well.
Well, look, it's good to hear that even the Gallagher brothers, for all that they're known for, a little kid comes up to them, they're like, all right, this is pretty cool,
Yeah,
So
they were incredibly nice, all of them. And that was when Guigsy was there as well. It was like still most of the original lineup, and they were very, very nice guys.
So, at what point do you actually start, putting bands together instead of just like, oh, I just want to play guitar and hang out maybe with my friends, and start actually, whether it's just, playing like a friend's party in the backyard, not like Van Halen style. Obviously, those parties are legendary. But at what point do you start just doing it? I don't even mean professionally, but like organized. Like, we have a band. This is our name. We're going to do mostly covers. Maybe we have one song, that sort of a thing.
Funny enough, I didn't actually start trying to even play with the band until I moved to the US.
Okay.
So everything like back home, I was just a nerd that was taking in all of the music that I possibly could
Yeah,
and playing the guitar
that
constantly. And
yeah, that's me, except for the part that I could never play the guitar. I would have loved to have had a knack for it, but
the
that's why
the
I talk to people about it.
the jury's out as to whether I can. So
Okay.
it's one of those things. But so when I moved over to the US, I ended up joining my first band, and it was very short lived and taught me a lot about being in a band very quickly. And so I did that for like a year and a half or so, and then quite frankly, I said to myself, "Oh, this is why people don't get involved with musicians." And so I got a career job and completely stopped that, except for writing, for myself and writing demos. And so I worked um, as a IT nerd for a couple of years, and I put out a song like years and years and years ago that was heard, and so I was offered the chance to go on tour full time. So of course, first thing I did, like a genius, was quit my good professional job
Yeah.
and play the guitar full time. So um, yeah, it didn't really like I didn't really try to pursue it honestly until like probably like 2006, 2007.
Okay.
I always wanted to do it. It was just a case of I I just kind of had always just written songs for myself and everything else. And so when it did come together, um, it was like jumped in with both feet and off we went.
Right. Yeah. And I think a lot of times you hear a lot of bands tell the stories. You have to kind of meet the right people. And
Yeah,
sometimes bands meet each other in high school. And sometimes they meet, the right people, in their early to mid 20s. It just kind of depends on when that happens. And,
yeah.
I maybe it's because I grew up in a pretty small town. There was nobody that was looking to be in a bad band with me. So, but even still, you're doing it a little bit later. So, that's almost 20 years now,
Yep.
and getting to go out on tour, that must have been great, and
Yeah.
was it everything you thought it would be, in the good way and bad way, or what was the reality of going out on tour for the first time, Stephen?
I think it took me about 2 months in that I was calling my boss at my professional job saying, you know what? Think I want to come back.
Yeah.
And they actually talked me out of it. So that was the funny thing. They said, the job is here for you if you want to come back, but you need to do this because you have to see if you can do what you wanted to do. So they
I mean,
were
that's a
actually,
very cool approach to have. Somebody who's actually
yeah,
looking out what's best for you is like, yeah, yeah, we can use another IT nerd as you described it,
yep,
but you know what? We'll find somebody else. You should really make sure that you want to do this. So that's
yeah.
yeah, that's great that you had that kind of support from somebody who it wasn't probably in their best interest for you to stay out there.
Yeah, it was very cool. Everybody at that job was they all knew what I love to do. I'd got like my first demo like played on a couple of radio stations and stuff back then, and so they all knew what was happening. And so when I got chance to play full time, they were all very supportive. It was like, if you want to come back, your job's going to be here, but you have to pursue it to at least know that you did so. And so yeah, so they were great about it. And then when I did start questioning that, they were good to say, yeah, you can come back, but we're not sure you should yet. And I was like,
Yeah.
so um it was an adventure though. We got to play like like a lot of big venues, a lot of big shows for my first time touring, and it was a hell of a lot of fun. But at the same time, it was okay taking a break from it afterwards as well.
What were one or two of the sort of like holy shit moments where you're like in if whether it's a specific venue, a crowd size, or playing with another band, one of those like, oh, maybe this is better than IT.
The funny thing was, even though it was by no means the biggest show, but I was still working in IT at the time, but they were like for the first few shows, but they let me go out to, play my first gigs and see what I thought. And so, I working, early in the week, and then we went out and we had a run of House of Blues gigs in Dallas and Houston that were sold out. And so I'd just been sitting in the cubicle like 2 days beforehand, and then, I've got a guitar solo in front of, the House of Blues. And I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, this is more fun. This is a lot more fun. And so then I remember the next thing that really got me was first time we played a show in Dallas. We had like 15,000 people there, and I looked to my left, and we were on like 100-foot big screen kind of thing. And I was like, wow, this is really weird. It
Yeah.
was it was very, very cool, but it was eye opening. So yeah, it was a fun experience though.
So, at what point does Agents of Demise come along? And I want to talk about some of the people that are a part of that with you, but give us a little bit of the backstory.
Uh, it kind of is like a long simmering thing. I started playing in LA after moving to LA in like 2012. I started playing there in probably like 2014, 15-ish, and was eventually invited to go play at one of the All-Star Jams down in Hollywood, and was introduced to Billy Sheehan and Ray Luzia, and my friend Eric Dover, the singer for the record. He came down, and we got up and we did Yankee Rose together. And
Nice.
that was like literally like 5 minutes after the meeting, Ray and Billy, I was on stage with them. So it was like sink or swim kind of time. And so we went through that, and over the next sort of few months, I started to play with Billy and Ray and Greg Bissonette, and those guys like more regularly. And then those guys ended up relocating, to Nashville, and I was in LA. And so we all had different schedules, different timings, but we had near misses where things nearly happened in the studio. We had something scheduled and it didn't happen, and it was like always nearly, nearly, nearly. But and so as time went on, we were always in touch, and everything, and it was a case of we'd like to do something, just a matter of when schedules are going to let that happen, especially with how busy those guys are. And then the pandemic happened, and
Ah,
everything shut down. And it was a case of, well, after a few months, it was like, well, like, what can I do to try and make the most of this? And so, like, the very end of the first year, so the very end of 2020, I reached out to Billy and was like, hey, man, do you have some time? Because might be a good idea to try this now, I guess. And that was pretty much how it came to be. It was making the most out of a bad time for everybody, and so was able to reach out to Billy. I'd already spoken to Eric, and Eric was like, yeah, man, I absolutely want to do this. And so we did the first tune together, and then went on to that came out really well. So when we had the chance to do a second, I was like, hey, let's find out if Ray's available, because the first song that we'd done used an old drum track that I had. Um, so we ended up re-recording the first song with Ray, and we did the second song with Ray, and it was like, well, these came out really well. Let's just keep going, and that's kind of how it came to be. So it was good timing from a bad situation that finally made it possible to happen.
right. And you referenced Eric Dover as a part of this, who I think a lot of people know from Slash's Snake Pit. And speaking of GNR, Dizzy Reed's also involved. So that
Uh,
must be great from the sort of the fanboy perspective of okay, I've got 100 Guns N' Roses questions, but I'll just ask one, and I'm gonna wait a while. I'm not gonna get to it right away. But that must be great. And Billy Sheehan, I actually met for the first time earlier this year when I was in Nashville. Part of my day jobs is I co-created and produce a podcast called 100 Songs That Define Heavy Metal, and it's hosted by Brian Slagle, who founded Metal Blade Records.
yeah.
Like, yeah, and he's known Billy forever. And Billy could not have been like a more laid back, regular guy, rock
he
star when you think about how many times he's zigzagged across the world. And, he was like, wasn't even sure how to get in. He was like kind of looking in through a door that was locked and was like, oh, well, it's Billy Sheehan. Let's let him in.
Yeah, Billy is an absolute gentleman. Like,
Yeah.
he is incredibly nice guy and a complete gentleman. And to be the rock star that he is, you would never know it from how he acts. He's an incredibly good person.
Yeah, and I think that that's great. That a lot of great music. Sort of what you were saying about the pandemic. We got a lot of music from people that maybe wouldn't have made anything because at a certain point,
Yeah,
it's like we got to do something. And
yeah, exactly. Like, I had been playing with I just started playing with a cover band. Actually, at the time, I was still writing stuff and everything else, but I had like a full year's worth of work already booked
Hmm.
when the pandemic happened. So we had like the full year and then some into the next year booked,
Oh
and
wow.
then everything is gone.
Yeah.
I think it was March or whatever. So yeah, it was. I think it happened to a lot of us, and it made things possible that probably wouldn't have been, or would have been a lot more difficult, or whatever else, or maybe would have happened at some other time. So yeah, it was good to make something to happen from that, and that's when it started. It was a long process, but yeah, it all came together then.
Yeah, and what I found is sort of the other part of this is a lot of people were home, and it became very easy to get people to talk to me on the internet. And I worked for people who were better known, and and they were like, "Oh no, they'll talk to you," and I'm like, "Oh really?" Because they're home, and then that's when I really started. I really only did audio with video once in a while, and then the podcast kind of sorry, the pandemic kind of changed really the way podcasts work because people were home. And look, I don't understand. I like to listen to a podcast while I'm doing things, but I understand that people also want to have the option to sit there and watch it. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that's all great. So, Agents of Demise, the song that our audio audience will get to hear, but as I always have to explain to musicians, I can't play it on YouTube because even though it's your song, I'm gonna get a notification from them like, you don't own this song. I'm like, I know, I'm trying to help people hear it. So people can go to agentsofyourdemise.com. And Sick Existence is the song. Talk a little bit about this one and why everybody feels like this is a good one to put out there at this moment.
It's got a little bit of everything in it, in as much as it's very much rooted in kind of harder, like what we would call, I guess, classic rock at this point, but at the same time it's a little heavier and a little bit more modern than doing a straight up, like, quote quote, like 80s rock record. Although there is, I think there's one on there that's purposely as like Mr. Big, as I could possibly write a tune. Um, but as a result, it had, you know, really, a catchy hook. The chorus came together really well, and it was a song that I'd had written musically for years, that I'd been like waiting for the right situation to finish it and get it out there. And so we put the first single out, which was Nothing's Made to Last, and that was earlier this year, just to kind of start letting people know that it was finally happening, because I did a lot of it kind of quietly. It wasn't something that people, if they already knew me and followed me, it was something that people knew about, but I didn't talk a whole lot about it until it was really, done. And so once we got to like second single, I was like, that's gonna be the one that we really start like getting people to hear, because I felt like it had a little bit of commercial appeal while also still having, authenticity in where it came from. So
Sure.
it was something that felt natural to put out.
And obviously, the problem when it's a good problem to have when you get all these people together and collaborate on something. It becomes difficult to actually perform live, and I'm not talking about
Mhm.
doing a big tour. Have Has the band played live in front of a crowd? Are there plans to do it anytime, or is it really one of those like, well, it's kind of really studio stuff because everybody's so spread out?
Well, a little bit of both. We haven't played live. We've all played live together,
Sure.
separate times, but not, not as part of this project. There is, I people, were open to doing it live. I think it would be difficult for Ray because of how busy, Korn are.
Yeah.
Uh, I no matter how much I attempt to sweet talk Jonathan Davis, I don't think he's going to care if I tell him I need Ray.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that Ray's bank account would particularly care compared to Corn either. So I completely understand that. So we, there's like definitely possibilities of more studio stuff in future, and versions of the band playing live. I was actually talking to Eric about it last night, funnily enough. So the songs will end up being played live. A
Great.
version of Agents of Your Demise will exist live. And who's gonna be able to play live? Don't know yet. But it's not a case of where anybody said, well, I won't do that. So it's nothing like that. It's a matter of seeing kind of what reception we get, what, what kind of desire there are for people to see it live, for people to want to make it happen. So I
Yeah.
get some of it is just it's a matter of wait and see. As annoying as the non-committed answer as that is, it's
Yeah.
having to kind of take
But
it, as it
it,
comes.
yeah, it's something that I understand is fairly common with some of the albums and songs that I'm talking to people promoting, and
Hmm.
not everybody can be like Vivian Campbell, who's in Def Leppard in an arena or a stadium one night, and then 2 nights later he's on a bus doing stuff for his other band, Last in Line, which started
Yeah.
as a Dio tribute band, and now they make some of their own great music. But they're playing like such, and then he goes back to Def Leppard. He's like, no, I want to make time for this, and it can be
Well,
very hard though to make all that work.
yeah, I mean, it's difficult for people, and we don't all, I guess, have some of those luxuries as well. I mean, if you look at even look at Slash, I mean, he has
Yeah,
guns, he has the conspirators, and he has his blues stuff too. You
yeah.
know, so we, it's amazing that people can jump from that many things, and so you know, with what happens with us. It's going to be really interesting to find out. Like, regardless, I'm looking forward to being able to play the songs live, though.
Well, when you talk about Slash and the Conspirators, who I was able to see a few years ago, I saw the first time I saw them, they were opening for Aerosmith, and they were
Mhm.
still doing GNR songs because Slash wasn't back in GNR at that point. But when you think about the Conspirators, you have Miles Kennedy, who is in that band. He's also in Alter
Yep.
Bridge, and he also has a solo career, and he
Yep.
tours for all of them. And he has that amazing voice.
Yeah.
I'm putting this out right now because it just occurred to me. I don't think he's human. He must be cyborg or something. It would
There,
make a lot more sense.
he's one of those guys that no matter what he does, he has not lost any of his range. And
Agreed.
it's
Yeah.
and it's that's one of those things that Eric is the same way. One of the things that amazes me about Eric's voice, and I tell him this too. I'm like, it and it kind of goes to what you said as well about the kind of laughing at myself a little bit about the fanboy thing. Eric and I have been tight for years now, but it there's still that like little fanboy part of me, from when I was growing up, that I bought the Snake Pit record in England the day it came out,
Yeah.
and his voice has not like there's been no like I don't no maturation in terms of it, losing any range or being lower or deeper. Like, if you listen to him sing now, he has the exact same voice he did, in '95 with Snake Pit, and it sounds as like fresh and everything is as it ever was. And he's the same way live, and it's so bizarre when you meet somebody like that. And Miles and Eric both have that, and as much as no matter how hard they push their voice or what they just always sound like them. And there's a lot to be said for that.
Yeah. There are only a few guys that seem to be able to pull that off. Obviously, there's some women too. I don't mean it in that sense, but there are a few singers who can
Right.
do that. What's far more common, I was very excited. I think it was 2008. So the Police get back together, and I was never a solo Sting fan, but I always liked the
Yeah.
Police growing up, and so I was like, great, I need to see this. And there's this moment in Roxanne where Sting's supposed to go up for Put on the Red Light, and then
Hmm.
it's slowed down and it's Put on the Red Light. I'm like, no, this is why I'm here. And look, he knows he can't do it anymore. I'll respect the fact that he didn't just play a track of him hitting the note, but it's a little disappointing. That's like, well, I guess I needed to see him when I was like 6 years old, Stephen.
Yeah, there's such a weird dichotomy with that, because I get it. Like, in as much as when 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 you go to hear somebody and there are those like those notes and everything else that become signatures for a band or for a song or whatever, and you don't hear it, it can be a bit of a bummer. But then the funny thing is, you have people like Steve Perry, who, when he did come back a couple of times, whether it be '94 or when he reappeared, like 10 years ago, whatever it
Yeah.
was, for the San Francisco like shows he guested at. not doing the high notes and kind of embracing that lower voice that he had now added its own character because of how good he is at being Steve Perry. And so yeah, it's a funny thing. It sometimes it works to where things get kind of ducked and avoided, and other times it doesn't. But it can add a new element to things too. But with Sting, yeah, I can see that being
It, it
being
was a
something.
it was a little disappointed,
Yeah,
because
I was
it's
never a
like,
big solo Sting fan either, though.
yeah.
Dominic Miller is a very nice guy. I met him
Huh.
at the same company as a kid. He's solo guitar player when same company that I met Oasis at when I was a kid. Very, very nice fellow.
Oh, very cool. Yeah. Well, Stephen Chesney, it's been great getting to know you and chatting with you about Agents of Your Demise. The song's called Sick Existence. As I mentioned, our audio audience will hear a little of it after we're done chatting. And I guess that the best thing to do is just go to agentsofyourdemise.com and you'll get the links to everything there, and keep an
So,
eye out for new music. And some version of live shows happening, people will be able to find out there.
yep.
And I really appreciate you taking the time. And I'll be thinking of you when the Oasis Rose Bowl show happens, and they haven't fought. The Black Crows have been back together for a few years now, and they've figured it out. And so hopefully the Gallagher boys can figure it out, at least for this tour. Nobody start
Yes.
planning for the next tour for a new album. Just see if they can do it.
Fingers crossed. And if it doesn't happen, you can think of me then too, because
Yeah,
I'll
that's true.
I'll
Yeah.
be sitting in a corner upset
Yeah,
somewhere.
GNR's been on the not in this lifetime tour for like 8 years now. So sometimes it works, Stephen.
Yeah, it's become a whole second lifetime for them, which is
Yeah,
something. So I guess it can work.
absolutely. Well, thanks again for your time, Stephen Chesney of Agents of Your Demise. Our audio audience, you'll hear Sick Existence right now. Everybody else, go to agentsofyourdemise.com. Thanks again, Stephen. I appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.